Hey, this is Patrick Mahomes, quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in. The Fantasy Footballers back again. Mike, the Fantasy Hitman, Jason Moore in the building. I'm Andy Holloway, and it is Tuesday, June 17th. It is hot here in the Valley of the Sun. Finally. Very, very, very hot.
Children, if you're outside for hours.
We named our basketball team just the Suns.
Yeah. Put sunscreen on.
Oh, yeah. Jason is...
It's a little hard to tell right now. I've powdered up, but I am burnt. My back is burnt.
We all... I mean, how many sunburns a year do you average?
Jason's got
one.
Jason's got the most.
But probably one and a half.
Every summer, you need to be reminded how terrible. You're like, you think, it's not going to happen this time.
He thought maybe Father's Day, celebrating that, you could get out of it by being a dad.
Yeah, swimming with the kids.
At like noon.
Right.
At 115 degrees out.
Yeah.
And you're paying the price.
Oh, yeah. My back hurts.
Welcome in, one and all. We've got early values and bust picks on the show today.
Yeah. We don't want you to get burned, so
okay, well done.
Our bust picks.
Yeah, and so we'll break those down. We've each picked a name for each of those categories, continuing what we did with sleepers and breakouts on the last episode of the show. We got some news to catch you up on as well. You can follow us over on Spotify and Apple, the podcast. Click that button so that the latest episode shows up in your pocket. You can watch the show, youtube.com/thefantasyfootballer. Subscribe, click that bell. We are a couple weeks out from the Draft Analyzer officially joining the Ultimate Draft Kit, July 1st, where you can import your draft and get a grade and a breakdown of the strengths and weaknesses of your team, have a plan of attack for the season. UltimateDraftKit.com. You can get over there right now. Check all of the perks and things that will help you with your draft. What else is going on? I think we're going to skip the quick question today and jump right into some news.
Nice.
News and notes from around the league.
Okay. Apparently the Saints have signed Cam Akers.
Okay.
9 lives, that one.
This kind of sucks a little bit just because, I mean, I know the team, Kendre Miller, 7 strikes, you're out type of situation, but Devin Neal was a running back that I know both myself and Mike really liked pre-draft process.
Yeah.
After the NFL draft, it's like, well, he was like a 6th round pick?
It was a third day.
So it was like, it just didn't matter. It's not going to work out, but I still like the talent and the fact that there was just Kamara there and then really not much else. I was like, that's not the worst landing spot, but now that Cam Akers
I
is
still
here,
have Clyde on my Dino squad.
Cam Akers, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Don't need to have that, Mike.
Probably
Devin Neal,
not.
Kendre Miller, Alvin Kamara.
I mean, that's a mess. That is a mess of knowing who to roster for an insurance
Beyond
back.
Kamara, yeah. James Cook fully participated in the 3-day mandatory minicamp.
it's good.
It is mandatory.
Still
Get your money.
hasn't been paid. Anthony Richardson, the latest report from Ian Rappaport, quote, expected to be fine by the beginning of training camp in July.
Just really meaning he doesn't need surgery.
Right. Well, it seemed like there was a fear. This has been kind of one of those snip, snap things.
I still have fear.
I mean, so he was told he doesn't need surgery, went to get a second opinion. That second backup opinion confirmed, yeah, you're good. So I think what they're trying to tell Anthony Richardson is you need to play through some pain.
It's the team.
Like, it's the opposite of Mac Jones. He's like, most guys would play through this, but I really want this surgery.
He was the quarterback that walked off when he was tired.
Yes,
and
he took himself out of the game.
I forgot about that.
It's like, why weren't you there on that down? He's like, I was tired. You don't get to. You're the quarterback. You don't get to walk to the sideline and
Never
let the
before
backup come in.
seen. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. This is, but I guess it's good news.
Yeah, I guess.
He's got a chance to win the job still, although it does sound like it's almost an uphill battle right now.
Well, Mike brought up Josh Downs as a sleeper candidate who is really undervalued in drafts right now, and I think that's true of whatever quarterback starts there. I don't think that's going to play a part in. I think you're in on Downs.
Yeah, I mean, regardless,
yeah.
I would if Josh Downs is my target, I'd rather have Daniel Jones throwing him the ball. But if it's Richardson, okay.
Jeremy Fowler reporting that Travis Kelce is down 25 pounds from last season.
Feels like a lot.
25?
He did. I mean, he looked slow last year, but we all just chalked it up to age, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the data, but perhaps was he up 25 last year?
It's possible.
This would be great news then.
Coming off a second Super Bowl, I could put 25 on after a Super Bowl.
Oh, I could, yeah. I could even after missing the playoffs. No problem.
That is a lot.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. I mean, obviously you've got the hopes that it's going to be faster and healthier. Obviously you're not losing weight at his age very easily. So he's putting in work. That's all.
Yeah.
Those are good signs.
Josh Reynolds, the clear-cut favorite to be the number 2 wide receiver in New York for the Jets, who have a bunch of names beyond Garrett Wilson that aren't attractive.
I mean, you
for
have
fantasy.
there's a lot of targets
Lazard and Corley and
that are available.
So, yeah, 186 targets vacated by Devontae Adams and Tyler Conklin. Jack Bash, currently, second year. Oh, okay, you're booing the news.
We don't
that
like
I haven't
this.
said yet.
The people don't like this.
Preemptive boo. Jack Bash has seen the majority of his reps with the second team right now. Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, and is it Tyquan Thornton?
No.
It's not Tyquan. It is Dante Thornton.
Thornton.
It is another Thornton.
That's why I got
Yes,
me.
the N is in the name. But the sad thing here is this is another rookie. Like Jack Bash is a wide receiver that we really, really liked, and the opportunity here to go play that second wide receiver, behind Jacoby Myers is great for a rookie, and it's kind of weird. And I think what it is it's just position, right? Dante Thornton is, a 6'5",
a real thorn
200-pound wide receiver who runs 4.3. So I think they're just seeing him. They want him on the outside to stretch the field, to open things up. But it does suck that he's going to seemingly so far so early. But right now he's running ahead of second-round pick Jack Bash.
There are a lot of situations where we want to see rookies get opportunities, and a bunch of more annoying veterans will get them at least to start the year. We're talking
not Dante. Dante is a rookie.
Well, no, I'm talking about Trey Tucker, who was an everyday starter for them.
Of course.
Or Tyler Lockett in Tennessee, when you'd rather see they have 3 rookie wide receivers that we want to get play over there, but instead you're going to get, snaps from Tyler Lockett. So there are just a bunch of situations like that where guys are established starters. The Jets, I mean, Josh Reynolds goes out there, he's going to be the number 2. It is just part of the game, and you have to trust that the young talent gets to break through at some point, but you don't always get the payoff that you want. Like Jack Bash would be a good example of somebody you love, who you might not get to see from day one do everything that you want him to do. And you just have to hope he's not the worst case scenario, which is Jalen Polk, who might not make the team.
Mm-hmm.
So
also a second-round pick, and he is buried. I was just looking at...
He legit might not make the Patriots.
I was looking at the depth charts because I was curious how most people are seeing the starters, because it could go... I mean, their depth chart is absurd. They've got like 8 of the same player at wide receiver, and I'm like, so is Booty the starter? Is it Pop Douglas? Obviously Diggs is there.
Mac Hollins is there. Kendrick Bourne is there. Javon Baker's still there.
The last I saw, Jay, I don't know, maybe you saw, a beat reporter was saying, so Diggs, Mac Hollins, Pop Douglas, Kyle Williams, those are considered right now the locks for the active roster. Everybody else is going to be fighting for a couple spots.
That's what it seems like, and that's where...
And Chisholm even got some buzz.
Oh yeah,
Efton Chisholm.
Yeah, I hope he makes the team. Don't waste your time with Jalen Polk.
Any other news that you guys have that you want to mention? Anything else? Cedric Tillman sidelined at Browns minicamp with what is believed to be a minor injury.
Yeah, but part of that report that showed up was, this is from The Athletic, of saying, no, but Tillman is locked in. He's the starter.
I hope so.
I know. I mean, I feel like that's like
David
of course,
Bell?
but for them to come out and say, like, I mean, he missed that time. He's kind of hurt again. For the beat reporters to have confidence that, don't worry about this. It's nice to hear.
And Brandon Beane, if you want some hype for somebody that I know Jason isn't a huge fan of, but Brandon Beane came out and said Dalton Kincaid has added both strength and bulk to his frame this offseason. It was more of an injury thing last year, which I do agree. I mean, he has struggled with that.
Yeah, there was also some Bills news out about the injury for Keon Coleman last year, slowing him down. So there's
Week
been some
9,
hype.
I think he had some sort of
Chipped bone.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, I like my bones
Unchipped.
fully intact.
Yeah. All right, let's jump right into it.
Bus.
All right, we define bus as, not players that are guaranteed to fail, but have some things working against them. They represent high risk for fantasy football players. They might look very, the outside looks like an attractive situation, but beware, basically. Like guys being overdrafted or people we think have the potential to bust and let you down based on their draft position. Last year, C.J. Stroud was a name we brought up on this show. And, nobody really wanted to hear that. Mike kept bringing it up over and over and over again
It was sad to even talk about.
Because he was exciting for the actual Texans and Texans fans, brought them to a playoff berth, surprise win of the division. But the numbers back behind it, there were a handful of elite games last year, 2 years ago for Stroud, but then there was a lot of mediocrity, and things didn't work out for Stroud last year for fantasy.
Right.
So we got some names we're bringing up today. It looks like we have a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver. Where do you want to start?
Well, I guess since he opened the show, I will go ahead and continue to talk about Patrick Mahomes. Thank you for being with us, Mahomes. But you are a great quarterback. I'm not sure you are a great fantasy quarterback anymore. I do think that there will be seasons in the future. We've talked about this in the offseason. When you talk about these all-time greats, Aaron Rodgers wasn't the number one quarterback for fantasy every year. He'd have down years. Tom Brady would go back and forth from completely different styles through his career where, sometimes they had a great defense and sometimes they had Randy Moss. So it's like, which Tom Brady are you getting? Well, right now, I think we're not getting the Patrick Mahomes that is going to be dominant for
He doesn't have his
right
Randy Moss right now. His Tyreek Hill is gone.
Exactly right. So he's 29 years old, entering his 9th NFL season. We were streaming him last year. He didn't have a top 12 weekly finish until week 9 last year. So if you drafted him, he was a bust last year. And yeah, he's drafted a little bit lower this year, but he's still being drafted a little too high. You have some really concerning data. I mean, everybody's felt it. The Chiefs are on primetime so often, and it's infuriating watching them win these close games and dink and dunk. And, it's like his average depth of target, this is a neat stat. It's gone down every single year of his career. 9.1, 8.5, 8.1, 7.
Every year of his whole career?
Since he became a starter, yeah.
Wow.
7.4, 7.2, 6.5, 6.4 last year. I mean, he's just throwing, a ton behind the line of scrimmage. He's only one of 6 quarterbacks that had more than 19% of his, throws come behind the line of scrimmage. And it's working. That's the thing. It's like, he's not a bad quarterback. He's not winning games. He's not getting to the Super Bowl. This is not like, hey, listen, Mahomes, these fantasy guys are pretty upset. So I know our fans are like, selling out, where you're getting all the ad revenue, but you got to do something for these players. You got to throw it deep. It's just not realistic to change right now.
It's so strange because, and you look at it, his first 6 years of his career, he's a 6.5% touchdown thrower.
That's great.
And the last 2 years, he's been 4.5 and 4.5.
That is exactly average.
But the first year without Tyreek Hill, he was the number one overall fantasy quarterback with 5,200 yards, 41 passing touchdowns, and then the last 2 years have been nearly identical. It's kind of do whatever the coach and the team and the players need me to do on a weekly basis. But for fantasy players, it's been tough, and it's an adjustment because you go on a run like that of 6.5% for 6 years. You kind of were in a place. I mean, I remember last year, you thought he'd bounce right back because that was the consensus.
Yeah.
He had so many finishes, so it seemed like an outlier year. Now we've got 2 in a row.
Right, and you look at the roster and the talent. It's like, okay, Kelsey still gets a lot of targets. He's doing less and less with each one of the targets, so that's not going to change. Rashee Rice is great, but the way he plays is that little screen. Get the ball in his hands early, let him have yards after the catch. Same with you got Xavier Worthy here, who's another get the ball in his hands early, so fast. That's just not the way for giant fantasy success, not the way for a lot of passing touchdowns to come. And if you look at where he's being drafted, this is really what it's about. Like right now, he's being drafted in the 5th round. And in the 5th round, there are so many running backs and wide receivers that I am targeting. That you've got a lot of the rookies there. You've got R.J. Harvey and Travion Henderson, and you've got players that I think are impactful. And then several rounds later is Bo Nix, is Kyler Murray, is players who have just as good a shot to finish ahead of Mahomes this year.
I think the biggest problem with drafting him is your commitment to him. It's not like it's a late round pick. So he's your starter.
Exactly.
Which means that you aren't going to pivot off of him, even though he hasn't been worthy of being an every week start for 2 straight years. His defense, the Chiefs,
that's where everything
fourth.
Changed.
They were 4th in points against.
And second, the year before that. I mean, if you look at a chart, it is an exact crossfade of, hey, when the defense was middle of the pack, our offense was the best in the league. Well, now our offense is ranking in the middle because the defense is the very top.
We need your defense to stink.
So
we need Joe Burrow and the Bengals to instruct your defense on how
if
to
Chris
support
Jones
fantasy.
goes down to an injury, go trade for Mahomes as soon as it happens. You know what I mean? Because if they had to go out there and put up 30,
they could do it.
5 points every single time with Andy Reid and Mahomes, they would do it. It's not like they're not trying to score, but the way that the game scripts work, they don't need to do it. They do what they need to win the game.
Yeah, and that is what Brady was like. When you needed to score a lot of points and you had the personnel to do it, he could do it. When you didn't need to do that,
well, unless you're playing, the Eagles' elite defense, then it did not work.
Yeah, well,
couldn't turn it on. The valve was already off, man.
Well, yeah, I think Mahomes is a super dangerous pick for fantasy because if you take him, you are taking him high enough to guarantee that that's your quarterback for the year, and you don't need to box yourself into Mahomes at quarterback. There have been a couple times on mock draft shows you guys have brought up going back-to-back late in drafts on a couple of shots, whether it's like a Fields and a Purdy or a Fields
Dak Prescott
and a Dak. Like you get more flexibility. You don't want to be locked. I remember this happening, I think it was to Russell Wilson at the end of the run in Seattle or shortly thereafter. He was the middle round. He had been really good for a long time, and people wouldn't sit him down, and he'd kill you week after week. That's the hardest place to be.
Well, and I think that people, when drafts come around and your actually push comes to shove, the name Patrick Mahomes, it feels good. I mean, it's one of those things where at the end of the draft, you finish your draft and you look at your roster and you go, okay, I got these running backs, these wide receivers, and I got Bo Nix. That doesn't feel as good as at the end of it going, I've got Mahomes leading my team. That sounds great, but it's like you still have to score fantasy points. He doesn't do it. In his last 17 games, his consistency score from the fantasy footballers is an F. He is
That's
as
the lowest
bad
grade possible.
It's the lowest. We don't go below it. So, bypass him in your draft.
All right, we'll take a break, and I've got another player that is benefiting from name value, I think, in average draft position. All right, I did not think that this player was going to be appropriate for this segment originally. But then I went and I looked at where he is going in fantasy drafts, And he's going ahead of wide receivers like Stephon Diggs and Jaden Reed and Ricky Pearsall and Josh Downs, who we just talked about, and Matthew Golden, a rookie with some upside in Green Bay, and a number of other players that I think are better bets in the 8th, 9th round of your drafts. And that is the once great, always
greatest.
a friend of the show,
Yes.
Cooper Kupp, wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks.
Cooper Cup of coffee.
He just turned 32 years old on Father's Day. And look, it was an amazing ride.
That sucks. To have to share Father's Day and your birthday on the same day. Like, you know what I mean? You don't get 2 celebrations.
Oh, yeah. So
You know what I mean?
It's the Christmas birthday.
Yeah, that's not. I'm
That
so
doesn't
sorry,
Does
Coop.
that
No, that
happen
wouldn't
every
be.
year?
No, that'll be.
No, it wouldn't be every year, but
Yeah.
that
You're saying it sucks this
yeah,
time.
this year you don't get Father's Day gifts and birthday gifts.
Hmm.
I mean, they might say like this one is, but you know the truth,
It's a combo. Oh, so you spent like, what, 2 times? 1.1.
right? Exactly. Anyways, I'm so sorry, Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp, the decline across the board. It's not like the Rams didn't know what was going on when they made a change. It's been painful to watch. His routes per game, his snap rate, his receiving yards per game, his yards after the catch per reception, his contested catch rate. Everything has been on a downward trend. And the real problem here is that you don't get 32-year-old wide receivers that change teams in year 9 and suddenly pay off for fantasy football. If you look at the players that change teams, like we're talking fantasy legends that change teams at 31 or older, you're talking like Jordy Nelson going to the Raiders, right? Or Michael Crabtree to the Ravens, or Golden Tate to the Giants, or A.J. Green to the Cardinals, or Robert Woods to the Titans. Like, and all of those seasons, it's like wide receiver 50, 55, 43, 62. You have 2 cases in the last 12 years where it worked out. Brandon Marshall moved
He was awesome.
at age 31 and was awesome his first year with the Jets. And you had Devon.
Oh, was that the Fitzpatrick year?
Yes.
Oh, man.
And again, he was age 31, not 32. Devontae Adams last year
Mm-hmm.
when he switched to the Jets. Those ones worked out, but Brandon Cooks and Beckham and, A.J. Green and the names that I mentioned, Deshaun Jackson, when they moved at this age, it's very, very hard because you've got a skill set going another direction, and now you're going to have a brand new offensive coordinator and offensive system you've never played with, Clint Kubiak in Seattle. You're going to have a new quarterback in Sam Darnold who, well, maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but how much is it going to work out, and how much can it sustain? And then you've got the injury history. He's played 9 games, 12 games the past 3 years. It just seems like as hard as it was for fantasy players and fans to watch the Rams say goodbye to Cooper Kupp, which I think it was really hard for Matthew Stafford. That was some of the feedback coming out was like, how could you let this guy go? The writing was on the wall, and I know he wants to go to Seattle, and he's a hard worker and wants to make it work. But it feels a lot more like a Jordy Nelson
It does.
Raiders type
Yeah,
of season.
he'll be valuable for the team. He's not done, but for fantasy purposes, you named a bunch of wide receivers who have the chance to elevate and be, Ricky Pearsall to step forward to be that first-round draft pick.
Is Jaden Reed going to step up this year? These are Josh Downs, Mike's sleeper pick, or you go with kind of on the way out Cooper Kupp. By the way, the only 2 players to even have those years, they moved to the Jets. So if he had gone to the Jets, I would feel much different.
So
about
now,
this.
Yeah,
now
totally
you're bringing
would.
you're bringing up another problem, and maybe this should be on the bust episode
Okay.
instead. I know he was one of the 2 names, but everything you said applies to the Devontae Adams this year,
Yes, it
changing
does.
teams as a year older,
Yes, it does.
not going to the Jets,
Right.
which is where the only place where it's worked,
No, that is all true.
and being drafted way higher than Cooper Kupp right now.
I'm not worried.
Yeah, and you're not worried,
I'm not worried
Mike?
about Devontae.
I am a
Adams.
little worried.
Are you?
Well, look,
well,
he
look,
looked great.
that math says you should be a little worried.
I will say this.
Yes.
The one thing that was in common with, you got that giant list of players who at this age changed teams. The one thing that was in common with Brandon Marshall and Devontae Adams succeeding outside of it being the Jets is that they were awesome the year prior. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't watch them and go, oh, I'm not sure. At the end of last year for Cooper Kupp, you had a little bit of I'm not sure.
Right.
So
Yeah,
now he's changing teams, and there's that fear. But at the same time, you can't do it forever. How old is Devontae Adams now?
32.
Okay, he's the same age as Cooper Kupp?
Yeah.
Wow, that's shocking.
Devontae Adams is an outlier. I also have terrible news
Okay.
for Cooper Kupp and Seattle fans. When asked about being surprised by anything he's learned about Sam Darnold, we're talking about Cooper Kupp here, Cooper Kupp says, Sam isn't a good golfer and has basic food taste buds.
Ooh.
So breakfast,
yeah, that's
if they're
not-
having it, it's basic.
Two traits that Cooper says are atypical of quarterbacks.
Okay.
Apparently, all quarterbacks
That
known
is
for
so
their
refined
known for their
palate.
golf
so
game.
weird. That is so weird.
These are leaders, and they lead by their taste buds.
And let me ask you this to close it out before we get Mike's bus pick. But what are you looking for when you take somebody in the 9th round?
Upside. You're looking for someone that can become a 3rd round or higher pick next
what's
year.
worthy of a higher pick. So that's the hard part is you've got all these variables working against him, and then you ask yourself, what's the real ceiling?
Yeah, the ADP is what gets me because Cooper Kupp is a player.
Wouldn't have brought him up if he
that-
was being drafted in the 10th.
If Cooper Kupp is later on in the draft, I can see a world where I go, yeah,
Stabilized.
let's see what happens
Yeah,
in 2
stabilize
weeks
a
with
little
Cooper
bit.
Kupp here. But that's a pick that you're hoping is at the very least a bye week fill-in.
All right, Mike, this one, your pick, I think he's going to ruffle
I
Yeah.
did
one
not
man's feathers.
like seeing it
and
at all.
Yes,
It's
and
the sunburnt man sitting next to me.
so the name is David Montgomery, running back for. Are you trying to find the
Yeah,
blue
where's
buttons?
this? Here we go. That's what
fine.
the people think of this pick.
This is fine.
I am the people.
And I am bringing him up, not like ranking wise. I have him right now at RB23. He's RB23 on Underdog. He's RB21 on Sleeper. I'm bringing his name up because what I have wanted to do is just copy paste last year, and it's like, oh, man, look, a couple years ago, Jamal Williams, all those touchdowns. Last year it was David Montgomery.
Last 2 years.
Yeah, okay, sorry. The last 2 years, thank you. And it is a combination of what the Detroit Lions were able to accomplish last year plus change. So like some statistical regression change that's probably going to happen, and then actual change with the offensive coordinator. So last year, David Montgomery, 6.5% of his carries went for touchdowns. That was the second highest rate in the NFL.
Felt like 98%.
And
When you're watching the first quarter.
I get it. You're like, these all he does is score touchdowns. But over the last 2 years, 37% of his points have come via touchdown. That is a red flag of numbers that are over 35% is where you start to be very concerned about regression. So looking at the team level, okay, the offensive coordinator is gone. Their all-pro center is gone. And the team was just so good last year. They became one of 7 teams over the last decade to average 3.8 or more touchdowns per game. And then if you look at the teams that we have data on what happened the next year, you have Matt Ryan's Falcons. They dropped from 4.1 down to 2.2. Mahomes Chiefs in 2018, 4.4 down to 3.5. Like Aaron Rodgers in 2020, 4.1 down to 3.1. Like that's still a great offense. Like they're giving you points. But if you take away nearly a touchdown a game, yeah, all those elite teams are regressing by at least 10 total touchdowns. If you're taking away a touchdown a week or so, like that is a big deal. I know that Montgomery has the upside should Jahmyr Gibbs miss time. Like I will not deny that fact. But you're having to take David Montgomery there in the 5th round.
5th round.
And then another thing on top of that was he's an older back. He's 28, and he's not completely inefficient, but big-time stuff is simply not happening. Last year, 185 carries. His longest run was 21 yards on 185 carries. Over the last 5 years, running backs with 185 or more carries to not have a longer run, 29-year-old Kareem Hunt, 37-year-old Frank Gore. Like he just
37-year-old Frank Gore.
Did you just say 37-year-old?
Yeah. Like because
the Infinity Stone.
Yeah.
the explosion, it wasn't there in terms of on the ground, and then he overproduced in the receiving game. His yards per reception was very high. He caught 95% of his passes that were thrown at him. Like just there's some things where the Lions themselves and David Montgomery, especially in the passing game, overproduced, and it makes me feel like There could be more fragility to the David Montgomery pick.
He was 13 for 55 on average. 55. That's what you got from him on the ground per week, but he scored in 10 separate weeks. So it is a lot of touchdown dependency.
Which you're like, hey, they're going to do it again. Maybe.
To me,
but historically, these teams, they lose touchdowns because to stay that hot, you can do it over a season. It happens. You catch fire, you're magic. But then the next season, you're like, oh, hey, we're not as good as we were last year.
The compounding issue to me would be this. Let's say you have two outcomes. The offense is humming and cruising like it was last year, right? And so Montgomery's fine, and it's touchdown dependent, but he's fine. The other option is the one that is more scary to me, which is the offense is not doing what it did last year. It is not humming and cruising. They are not scoring as much. The answer to that equation—
It could just be cruising.
The answer to that equation is not more David Montgomery.
It's more Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's more Jahmyr Gibbs
right.
to spark the offense. So if it does go bad, it could go worse, in my opinion, because you need Gibbs, who is you just talked about those numbers, the 20-yard, 20-plus
if you need juice,
runs.
you need Jahmyr Gibbs.
You almost need him out there more if your offense isn't working. So that would be the gamble, I think. And then he misses games. He has missed a handful.
He's missed a few. I feel like he's
never played a 17-game season before.
For real?
Never.
How about a 16-game season when that was the full season?
2019.
2019.
Ha-ha!
But
we did it.
15, 13, 16, 14, 14.
Also known as his worst fantasy season ever, Jason.
So here's what I'll say is that in the 5th round, I think he is a decent pick still, and you alluded to it, because he's going to be a solid running back who you can plug and play, and more often than not, I think you'll be okay. He definitely has a lot of these regression things, but he always has the built-in upside of the Jahmyr Gibbs injury to launch him forward to where now he's a steal in the 5th round. Most people don't necessarily have that.
I agree.
However, the one thing that I think is the scariest part about David Montgomery, and I think is you buried the lead. It is the number one thing as a David Montgomery manager in our league of record. I was terrified. I don't think you mentioned it, but Frank Ragnow.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did? I mean that.
I said the offensive coordinator is gone. Their all-pro center is gone.
Frank Ragnow is the highest-rated run blocker over the last several years. He's a very good, well-rounded player, but he is a run blocker, like elite run-blocking center. That's why 3 years in a row you've had double-digit, massive, like way more than double-digit touchdowns from whoever their goal line back was, whether it was Jamal Williams or last 2 years David Montgomery. And it's like,
yeah, it's a big loss.
You missed that big center run-blocking monster, and all of a sudden, maybe you got to get more creative around the goal line, and you can't just run it up the middle the same, which is what David Montgomery is doing. That's my biggest fear with him. So I think his range of outcomes is very wide.
I'm not out here saying it's a complete David Montgomery's going to fail. I'm bringing his name up on this episode, this section, because he's becoming a higher risk, a more fragile type of a selection where he is in draft.
He had 12 touchdowns last year, 13 the year before. You won't be happy with 8 or 6.
Yeah, and 8 is that's still a good year.
What's weird though is I will say this: I still think when you look at who's behind him in the draft, there are running backs. If you're not a rookie and you're being drafted behind Montgomery, I think Montgomery's the best value between the 5th and 7th rounds.
And what I expect—
Pacheco, Jones, Tyrone Tracy, Pollard. I mean, you could take your shot at Harvey or Judkins or Henderson. That's fine, but
by the time drafts come around, I think that those rookies will be ahead of Montgomery. I think Judkins and all those guys when push comes to shove. So yeah, I mean TBD where the chips fall on average draft position, but
yeah, I mean there's a path. I mean you don't. When you have a running back that finishes high as he's finished the last 2 years, there is a clear path to regression there. And I think that was on the table last year, probably brought up in the offseason, didn't happen.
No, and then they were even better.
Yeah, but there are some variables there, and we'll see how the Lions – I mean, the Lions offense, we're really kind of counting on that to be real good. All right, let's talk some values.
Values.
All right, this is one of my favorite areas for fantasy is just players that are kind of being forgotten about, Not necessarily players you go reaching for in drafts, but guys that are dropping to areas that they shouldn't be and where we feel they may be a steal in your drafts. You hit on a couple of value picks. It makes a tremendous difference to the depth of your team and your flexibility in making trades throughout the year and getting, taking your team from, being in the top half to being a top tier squad.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important positions you could do that with is a running back. If you get a good value on a running back, that's going to solidify your roster for a championship run. One of the guys, usually most years, some of the values are in the veterans that no one wants to be caught holding the bag when they're no longer good. And so kind of like what I was just talking about with Montgomery, I think by the time the draft comes around, all these rookies will be drafted ahead of Montgomery. I think it might happen with this guy as well, who I think is a value where he's going in the drafts right now. It's Joseph Mixon, Mike's favorite player.
I'll hit the button.
You hitting like the full name to see if you can trick him?
Yeah,
because Joe Mixon's already triggering.
Dude, you should check out this Joseph Mixon guy. He's 28 years old, and I think that especially with the addition of Nick Chubb being added to the roster, his ADP is not going north. Right now he's right up basically the beginning of the 5th round, and I could see it going lower. But when I'm there, I think it's a very good pick. And if you don't remember how good he was last year, I mean, from weeks 1 through 11, he was the running back 1. And that's not like weeks 1 through 4. That's the majority of the season for fantasy season, all the way up till week 11. He was averaging 23.3 fantasy points per game. He had over 100 rushing yards in 7 of his first 10 games. He's just a workload monster. He is tied with Kyren Williams for the 5th most weighted opportunities per game, and he had the 4th most total red zone touches. Keep in mind, he missed 3 games, and he had the 4th most. That wasn't like per game. That's total. You also have a scheme change here, going from Bobby Slowick, who I think everyone loved 2 years ago, and then last year, I don't know why his play calling was so bad, but it was so apparent, and everyone knew it, and they fired him.
Very strange.
And they're going to Nick Caley, who is coming over, and he's basically more of a man gap scheme than the zone scheme that we saw last year. And if you look at the splits for Mixon between zone and man gap, and this goes back including the Bengals, he is way better at the man gap scheme. So I think it's a good transition for him.
Yards per carry 5.05 in man gap versus 3.71 in zone.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a player who the Texans have given a ton of money. I mean, he is their lead back, and I feel like people are a little bit worried that now they're bringing in Chubb. Now this is going to be a rotation that's like a 1-2 punch. They paid Nick Chubb pennies, nothing. This is J.K. Dobbins just went out and got $5 million. I don't have the number in front of me for what Nick Chubb.
I think he's got incentives up to that amount, or up to 4 point something.
But like his actual guaranteed
1 year, 2.5.
Yeah, so half the money J.K. Dobbins got. This is Joe Mixon's backfield, and also Nick Chubb is 30 years old, coming off of multiple injuries, a devastating knee injury. So this is a guy I think is being forgotten how good he was last year.
411 is a steal. He's going to stay a steal for me as well. I agree with you completely. The Packers with Josh Jacobs, the Texans with Joe Mixon. There were conversations last offseason that were centered around how good Devin Singletary was in Houston, and why would you go do this when Singletary could run well? Then they showed you the difference in offensive philosophy. Now, I think Mixon had to carry the load maybe a little bit more than they would have hoped last year, just with respect of Diggs' injury and Dell's injury, but
he had his own injuries.
He's the guy for at least another full season, and you're not paying. I mean, where's Jacobs going right now?
Oh, Jacobs is much higher than that.
It blows my mind that this guy who was the number
Josh
one running
Jacobs
back
is in the 2nd round.
He's the number 1 running back in fantasy for the first 11 weeks.
Yeah, and then he got
the meaning right before the playoffs start.
Was it a high ankle sprain?
Well, he had one early
the high
in the
ankle sprain
season
was early, and then he got something else later.
He re-aggravated it and dealt with something else. So there are risks, but not at 411 to me.
Yeah, I mean, we ironically, we're talking about a lot of the guys here in that 5th round area about who you would draft. I think that there is upside and safety and a volume monster. At running back, I want someone who I think, is going to be in the top 15 running backs in total opportunities. And then you have the chance here that C.J. Stroud kind of bounces back and, looks more like what we hoped he looked like last year. This is an offense that could be good. They're in a weak division. So there's a lot of ways that this could work for Joe Mixon.
He also had quite a few big runs. I mean, I had him on my team. I was watching him a lot last year. A 59-yard run, a 45-yard run, 30-yard runs. Like, he had more breakaway runs than he eventually got caught.
Right.
He didn't take them all the way to the house. But there were more explosive plays from him where, I like the value there. It looks like he's RB16 off the board on Underdog, 17 on Sleeper. I have him ranked at 14. He's the perfect RB2 for any team.
That's
if you
what's
end
so
up
nice.
snagging like a, whatever, Gibbs or some high upside big play guy, you get the veteran to go out there and put up 85 yards and a touchdown.
At the 4-5 turn where he's going, he can easily be your third running back.
I have horrifying news.
Oh, no.
You're the highest.
I am not the highest.
Oh, no?
But I am not the lowest.
No, I am aware that I come in last on total current stats, but I still look at him as, obviously I brought him up because I think he is
I'm moving him down.
I think he's a value.
Just because.
Yeah,
he is.
Pure
He
hatred.
is. He's a value.
This is why the Joseph thing. Get Joseph into his head. He's a fresh player. Just look at the stat lines from last year.
I'm not always current where you guys' rankings are, and I was very surprised to see that.
I did see that. I have a name that I'll bring up here in a minute. He is not living around the 5th round, though. So we'll talk about somebody that is just barely being drafted that it's time to look. Give him another look. Well, last year it was really, really rough for this running back. In fact, it's hard to argue that there was a bigger bust.
There wasn't.
I don't think there. I think he was the biggest bust.
Christian McCaffrey.
Doesn't matter.
I got Mixon wrong. I got this guy right.
That's true.
Yeah, and no one stepped up, but he stepped down. It's Travis Etienne, and he is here on the values episode. He's already accomplished the bust.
Man.
He's
People
already
are
accomplished
so
the
mad
bust.
at Travis Etienne. It's
Well, look,
crazy.
I am one of them, Mike.
Here's the nuts and bolts of what happened last year. He was coming off a finish at running back 3 overall. Over 1,000 yards, 58 receptions on 73 targets. This is first round pick. It's a second round pick. And he ends up going from 15 points a game to 7.4 a game. And this was not an injury loss season. This was not Christian McCaffrey the bust. This was I'm going out there every week and giving you half of what I gave you last year. This was RB 37 from a first or second round pick. And the Burns are now swinging that pendulum to a place that is sitting. He's at RB 34 on Sleeper. And
I think that's too high.
Well, yeah, I don't. I think what's wild here is we are waiting for the dust to settle a little bit on Liam Cohen and what's going to happen at running back, and we're starting to see a little bit of what the plan might be. And so he's in no man's land in drafts now, but I think he has a value because right now, this is the starting running back for a team with a new offensive coordinator that I think we should start out pretty excited about.
Yeah.
Liam Cohen, his offense, last year in Tampa Bay, you have 2 top 24 running backs. You're a team that was second in running back fantasy points, second in running back reception, something that Etienne's proven he can do, first in total running back receiving yards. So putting Travis Etienne in a position where he's not just running it up the middle is important. Whenever we've seen Travis Etienne in space, that's where his special gifts shine. And he is a first-round draft pick that went out and put up an RB17 and an RB3 season. And then last year, it's like, last year could have been his last, like Jacob's last season with the Raiders, where people are like, what in the world is going on? And we're giving up. Sometimes seasons just go really, really poorly. And it doesn't mean that Etienne's going to stay the starter the whole year. But if you invest a 9th-round pick on him and he does succeed in this offense because they build stuff around what he's able to do, you stole in your fantasy draft. And that's the thing, is you're getting him at the lowest possible price. And Liam Cohen is a good offensive coordinator. He came out and talked about, they don't want to trade Travis Etienne. Etienne's very excited about what they've done with the offensive line. They've invested in both free agency and the draft. They were ranked 31 and 32 in run blocking. So you can go out and say, Travis Etienne, you were a humongous bust. Yeah, that's true. You had no offensive line. You lost a bunch of offensive weapons, and you lost your quarterback during part of the year. Throw the season at least partly out, in my opinion, and say if they name him the starter and they give him those opportunities, there's just no way for him to not deliver better than a 9th-round selection.
You can look at, part of a downer for it is Tank Bigsby just looked like the better runner last year. And that's not to say Tank Bigsby was flawless.
He was the better in between the tackles runner for sure.
So he's running on. That's the same team that Tank is playing for. So that kind of hurts the optimism for Travis Etienne. I think that is completely a part of it. But watching the way that Cohen has talked about Travis Etienne thus far is the market is wrong, I think. And I don't love Travis Etienne, the player, but I think that the market is wrong of guessing who's going to get the production. And guys, he's coming from Tampa Bay, right? We know he's like Bucky, but I think he likes Rashad White.
Definitely.
Guys, 3.7 a carry, 6.5 per catch.
Oh, that sounds like
Who
Rashad
does that
White.
remind you
That
of?
sounds like Travis Etienne.
Cohen's got to love that.
If you put Rashad White on the team in place of Travis Etienne, I think he'd be going ahead of the 9th round.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And I don't think that
they're not
Etienne's
that different.
I don't think Etienne's a worse runner than Rashad White. That'd be really hard to do.
Yeah,
Rashad White managed to average those numbers with a much better offensive line. So look, this is not make Travis Etienne your my guy territory, because I know you guys will sneak him in like Bigsby.
Yeah.
But this is hey, you just need to stay water with the baseball tootin' excitement and Tank Bigsby. Like if Cohen, wow, I thought there was a sound problem. And it was you farting into the microphone.
I
was like, that was a glitch.
No, it was just you.
I said baseball tootin'. Yeah, it just happens.
Just happens
What?
sometimes.
Who was that? Is that Matt?
Yeah, that was
the
Matt.
Child in the room.
Yeah,
Goodness
just that
You found that
gracious.
too funny.
To give you one more quote, Etienne said Thursday at minicamp that Liam Cohen's offense has been getting him into a lot of space, puts him in a position to make plays. And then they came out, Sports Illustrated's John Shipley said he will start as the team's RB1. So you're going to get your first shot at success, and you look at those other two, Tootin's going to have to overcome, thank you, being a rookie, and Bigsby is not as versatile in the passing game. So
The podcast needs
And
Etienne or Bigsby to be the starter.
We did confirm that Travis Etienne is an official Footy Award winner for last year's Poopiest Pants.
Yes.
Oh, he was?
Yes.
He was the official winner.
Yeah.
So it's in the mail. Did he get it yet?
No, it's in the mail.
Still in the mail.
Yeah.
Most of the footy stay
checking
in
the box.
They stay in the mail.
Every day they're walking out, opening that mailbox thinking, is today the day?
Yeah.
So that's my value pick, Mike. You have a name that I feel like is like you have a great deal of conviction about this player.
It has been building. He gets brought up a decent amount on this show, but I want to actually make a case for George Pickens of the Dallas Cowboys, or as Jason refers to him, George.
That's a pretty
We're on a first-name basis.
It's a pretty lazy nickname if you just take the last name
It
off.
just helps
and
me remember who it
that's
is.
just his name.
He's-
That's not a nickname.
He's George. Baseline stuff here. Look, he's 24. He's going into year 4.
He's only 24.
He's only 24. His sophomore year was 1,140 yards, 5 touchdowns. So yeah, there was excitement for this past season with Fields and Russell Wilson, and it did not work out. You only had 300 yards, but Pickens appeared in 14 games. He had 900 receiving yards in 14 games, and NFL.com, they just put out a thing of players who lost the most yards because of penalty. It got called back. George Pickens is one of 4 players last year who had over 100 yards negated by penalty. Like, you tell me George Pickens in 14 games puts up 1,000 yards in 3? Like, people are more excited about that. Yes, he has been inconsistent. He's a C last year, a D before that, C before that. Inconsistency. So it comes in big games. I don't know if you want George being your one, but he is just a nitro boost to your fantasy lineup. He's been over 15 yards of reception each of his first 3 years.
I got one. Like, I'm gonna be on your team for a second.
Okay, welcome aboard.
And give you something that
he said for a second.
Well, the last time, so Dak was hurt last year.
Yeah,
he played a full season in 2023. Is everybody's fantasy darling. I just want to know if you can remember off the top of your head how many touchdowns Brandon Cooks scored for the Dallas Cowboys in 2023, because most people consider Brandon Cooks' Dallas career to be kind of unremarkable, never in the headlines.
Brandon Cooks was like, he had that stretch at the end of the year where he was catching a touchdown per game. I would guess, I'm going to go 7.
I'm going to go 8.
He had 8. 8 touchdowns. Brandon Cooks had 8 touchdowns. Back half of his career with Dak, across from CeeDee Lamb. The opportunity is right in front of you.
In fact, the Cowboys have ranked in top 10 for total wide receiver fantasy points in 5 of the last 6 years. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback.
In the absence of Blake Jarwin, they've thrown to the wide receiver position.
We all do this. He's playing with the best quarterback of his career. That is a very go-to move for fantasy analysts. It is so unbelievably true at this point, though, for George Pickens, who gets to go to play with Dak, who over the last 3 years, 7th in pass success rate, 6th in completion percentage, 8th in passer rating. Like, Dak is a good quarterback. From all accounts, everything is going very well.
Well, that's because he hasn't been not targeted yet.
as of right now. And then you like where George is going in the draft and looking at all the players around him, it's good players, but you have real question marks like Chris Olave, okay, quarterback and health. Xavier Worthy.
I'd take my shot on Pickens.
Like Xavier Worthy,
I think.
Maybe you want to be in on Worthy. I have some scheme questions, but maybe you want to be on Worthy.
See Pickens there.
That's fine. Jalen Waddle, quarterback questions. Jameson Williams.
Try Pickens there.
Jameson Williams that's a great pick. Chris Godwin, injury concerns. Jordan Addison, some quarterback questions, and there was a tiny blurb coming through about Jordan Addison. If you recall, back in 2024, I think it was, he got cited for a DUI. So there's some stuff going on with his trial. So that's all still up in the air. Then right after that's Jerry Jeudy. Oh, hey, look, another quarterback problem. In this range of wide receivers, there's
not a lot of players with that level of upside and youth.
Like Jameson and George Pickens, who are wide receiver 2s, but they're on offenses where we can feel good. Like if they're
imagine rolling those two guys out together.
You better have a one
on one team.
But so point being, I'm very confident that George Pickens maximizes this year. Like I said, 900 yards last year with over 100 yards lost to penalty in 14 games. He was almost 1,200 yards the year before that.
Having that on the resume, the 1,100 plus.
Yeah.
I mean, Jason, do you think he's priced right?
Yeah, I mean, I look at the wide receiver 2 for Dak Prescott on a team that can't run the ball, and I think
that too.
I think that should be a
they
top.
Have Miles Sanders now.
Should be a top 24 wide receiver if the wide receiver is good. So the question is George good?
I think he's good.
I think he's good too. And the fact that he's only 24 years old, it goes a long way because he's not. We should not have seen the best of his career yet.
I think that genuinely what gets in George Pickens' way is going to be George Pickens. It's going to be you are certifiably not in a position to be the one on this team. That is just and he should,
which I think
he should know it.
I think he knows it. When he's on the Steelers, he was the number one guy, and he's like, you will treat me like the number one, not with CeeDee Lamb there.
You can certainly hope some of the on the field maturity is forced upon him by knowing his role in this offense and embracing that, and not because you want to see consistency from him in some capacity. That's been part of the problem. It's just like you don't play him and he breaks off a 70-yard touchdown. You do play him, it's a week he's 2 for 15. That was some of the troubles, but again, bad quarterback play is putting it nicely.
But a fun stat here, is George Pickens good? There's only 2 wide receivers in NFL history who have totaled more than 2,800 receiving yards while averaging 16 or more yards per reception before turning 24.
He has not signed another contract.
He has not.
So that is interesting. It's almost like do you
want the name?
Yeah, go ahead.
George Pickens and Randy Moss. No, he's not Randy Moss. But point being,
no, I don't want the name.
He has accumulated like a lot of yards, and he's a big yards per catch guy. I mean, he's 24.
Do you want him to sign?
With Dallas
in redraft, would you want him signed?
For this year, I don't think it makes any difference in redraft.
I think I would not want him signed.
Yeah,
George Pickens.
I think he's the type of player that
payday Pickens.
I want
payday Pickens.
Yeah.
Which, oh man, that'd be that. George Pickens could do just something incredible this year. Of go out, have a monster season, be great for fantasy football, and go get a gigantic bag of money the next year.
It's like if he has a big season, he's not a Cowboy.
No,
because Lamb already has that big deal,
and that works for the Cowboys because then they'll get compensation back for losing him in free agency
and a good year of football.
Yeah.
All right, we have a brand new show coming up. We've got undervalued or overvalued, underrated or overrated. Actually,
there you go.
Is the name of the show. On the next episode, we've got another mock draft coming up in the next couple of weeks. We've got a Footballers AMA show. A lot going on, and you can check out the Ultimate Draft Kit. Prepare yourself for the big drafts coming up, the most fun time of year. Everybody's undefeated. Set the foundation for your team, ultimatedraftkit.com. The app is available on Apple, on Google Play, and we are adding features and upgrading that thing all the time, including the draft analyzer coming out very soon, which we have big plans for. So if you want more information, ultimatedraftkit.com. For that, any parting words, gentlemen? Do you have anything to say to the people? Jason, how's the back? Are you?
Oh, I'm in a lot of pain.
In a tremendous amount of
pain. What a guy! I tried to walk after lunch around our building as I do, and it was too hot.
You just didn't think, after all the years of knowing the Arizona sun, like sunscreen on day one would have been a good.
He's tougher than the sun.
Forget every year.
All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.